Donald Trump just made one of the most reckless and dangerous moves we've ever seen from a sitting president. He revoked Secret Service protection from Kamala Harris, a former vice president of the United States. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. A former vice president, one of the most high profile women in America, a woman who has been threatened, vilified, and targeted for years. Trump didn't just cut her protection. He deliberately ripped it away at the exact moment she's about to launch a nationwide book tour where she'll be in front of crowds, cameras, and strangers every single day. I'll tell you, that's not coincidence. It's calculated. By law, former vice presidents only get 6 months of Secret Service protection after they leave office. That 6 months ended for Harris back in July. Normally, her protection would have stopped there. But President Biden saw the writing on the wall. He knew Trump would go after his political rivals. He knew Harris was still a target. So Biden extended her Secret Service protection through January of 2026. Trump didn't just roll back a policy. He overrode that extension. He chose to personally strip away the one safeguard standing between a former vice president and the constant stream of threats she faces every single day. That's not leadership. That is political vengeance weaponized. Let's be clear about what this means. Secret Service isn't just a couple of guys in suits and sunglasses. They're the ones running intelligence, scanning social media, monitoring extremist chatter, and stopping plots before they become action. They're the ones coordinating with local police when Harris steps into a public arena. They're the people who make sure when threats surface, and they always do, those threats never reach her. And Trump, he ripped that away. He left her to fend for herself with private security that will never match the scope, the reach, or the intelligence capabilities of the United States Secret Service. Now let's ask ourselves why. Why would a president of the United States put a former vice president at risk like this? The answer is ugly, but it's simple. Because she is his rival, because she's a black woman who stood up to him, because she represents everything he hates and everything his base cheers for him to tear down. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about fairness. This was about revenge. And here's the bigger danger. If Trump can yank protection from Kamala Harris, he can yank it from anyone. Today it's her. Tomorrow, it could be any other opponent on his enemies list. Maybe it's a senator. Maybe it's a governor. Maybe it's their families. He said in the precedent that your safety as a political official depends on whether or not you bow down to him. That is authoritarianism. This move isn't just reckless. It's vindictive. It isn't just political. It's personal. It's dangerous. And it shows once again, Trump isn't focused on protecting America. He's focused on punishing America. So don't let anyone tell you this is just procedure. Don't let anyone downplay this as normal. This is Trump using safety as a weapon, turning protection into punishment. And when a president starts deciding who deserves to be safe and who doesn't, we're not living in a democracy anymore. We're living under a ruler who thinks he can decide life and death based on loyalty. And that's exactly what makes this move not only ridiculous, but terrifying.
We have some breaking news. Donald Trump has canceled Kamala Harris' Secret Service. Now, the Secret Service normally protects a former vice president for 6 months. But before Joe Biden left office, he extended her Secret Service. Now, Donald Trump signed off on this yesterday, and it goes into effect on Monday. Now, the reason being that Ms. Harris' Secret Service was extended a year past her deadline was because of security concerns. Now, the spokeswoman for the White House and for Kamala Harris decided to not comment on this situation. Now, some are saying that Donald Trump ended her Secret Service protection is because she's about to travel the world, as she is promoting her new book about her presidential campaign. The book, titled 107 Days, is set to release on September 23rd. Now, he's going to claim that he terminated her Secret Service agreement because of money. We all know that. But I believe the real reason is that he just didn't want her to be protected while she traveled the world promoting her new book. What else will this man end up doing today?
Orange bitch strikes again. Getting rid of Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail, seriously, you have nothing better to do on this Friday morning than to be a petty bitch. Now, everybody knows that vice presidents, after their candidacy ends, they get 6 months of Secret Service detail. Now, Joe Biden signed a memorandum because of the amount of threats that Kamala Harris was receiving, and rightfully so. We've seen how disgusting that shit was over the culmination of the last year. He signed the memorandum to give her a year's additional of Secret Service detail, right? Anybody in their right mind would look at this type of shit that people are saying, the racist, bigoted shit that people are saying, how they're wishing unaliving upon her, and be like, yeah, maybe she needs a higher form of protection for a little bit longer, right? But of course, because this orange nasty bitch is always having his panties in a bunch, he just always has to find a way to get a dig at Kamala Harris. So he was like, you know what? Let me, when she's about to start her book tour and be touring the country, get rid of her Secret Service detail. You have got to be the most nasty, petty orange bitch to exist on this planet. And all that bruising that's going on your body, yeah, listen, the universe is coming back to get it. And you're still trying to be a disgusting, I'll mince my words, but we all know how everybody feels about Donald fucking Trump.
So Donald Trump has officially stripped Kamala Harris of her Secret Service protection after Biden extended it. Now, naturally, people are calling Trump a dictator and saying this is authoritarian. What people don't realize is that typically vice presidents, when they leave office, get 6 months of Secret Service protection. Joe Biden extended it to 18 months for whatever reason he had to do that. So basically, Trump just canceled out the extension. As of right now, she's had it for 7 months, so 1 month longer than most VPs. When Joe Biden left office in 2017 with Obama, he had it 6 months. When Mike Pence left in 2021, he had it 6 months. There is nothing controversial about this. This is normal for a VP to lose their Secret Service after 6 months. You have people like one of the Krasensteins going, I hope that Newsom revokes Trump's Secret Service detail on January 20th, 2029. One, you're assuming Newsom will be president. And two, that's not even the same equivalency. Trump would be a former president at that point, which he gets it for life. He's not a VP. And that would be day one, not past the already 6 months you would get if he was a VP. So yeah, nothing controversial about this, but I'm sure that's not going to stop the left from freaking out.
I'm no conspiracy theorist at all, but this is terrifying to me, and let me tell you why. The fact that Donald Trump is revoking his former opponent and our former vice president's Secret Service is very telling and very scary. Like, the mere fact that Joe Biden had to extend it, which normally vice presidents only keep Secret Service for 6 months, but Joe Biden extended it because he knows that Donald Trump ain't right too tight in the motherfucking head, especially him and his motherfucking supporters. In fact, remember this, shortly after he was inaugurated, he granted clemency to those who were arrested on January 6th, even those convicted of violently assaulting police officers. These are the same people who climbed the wall, stormed the Capitol, standing outside with a noose threatening to hang former Vice President Mike Pence. All because they didn't want him to certify the fucking election. Oh, Kenny, this is nothing. Oh, no, it's not nothing. We've already had politically motivated assassinations of Democratic lawmakers earlier this year in June. And former Vice President Kamala Harris is a private citizen now. She's not elected to office, meaning any security that she has, she's going to have to pay out of pocket for. And we already know that Donald Trump still looks at her as a threat because she had his number. Everything that he's doing, she already told us what he was going to do before he even damn did it. And I don't trust that sneaky, vindictive, fat bitch. And what's scary is earlier this month, he was seen with Vladimir Putin, the same person whose political opponents have just mysteriously passed away. I wonder what these two were so giddy about. What the fuck are they motherfucking plotting? I don't smile like this unless I got a motherfucking scheme or if I'm getting my dick sucked. I don't trust it.
Friends, we had some breaking news this morning. Donald Trump decided to wake up and cancel Vice President Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection, effective September 1st. Yep, and technically, vice presidents are legally entitled to 6 months of protection after they leave office. But President Biden actually extended her protection for a full year because of all of the threats she was receiving. Just before Kamala Harris is about to go on her 6-month multi-book tour, Trump decided to cancel her Secret Service protection. No security detail, no threat monitoring. Her team will now need to fork out millions just for protection. Like, why are we weaponizing security policy? This is ridiculous. Please share this message. This is all really important news that I think you all should know about. Trump literally took away the former vice president of the United States Secret Service protection detail.
So today, Donald Trump woke up and thought it would be a great idea to take away Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection. It's very obvious that he's still upset over the debate where she humiliated him in front of the entire world. Of course, presidents receive Secret Service protection for life, but Harris, a former vice president, received 6 months of protections after leaving office, according to federal law. That period ended on July 21st. However, her protection had been extended for an additional year via a directive not made public until now, signed by President Joe Biden shortly before he left office. Now, to me, it's very obvious that he signed this directive because she was running for president, therefore she needed additional protections. That extension that Joe Biden signed shortly before leaving office is what Donald Trump decided to cancel today. Kamala Harris has received multiple different death threats because she was the first black woman to be the vice president. But since Donald Trump was humiliated by her in front of the entire world during the debates, he decided he was going to revoke her additional protections. He's making this decision just as Kamala Harris is about to go on a multi-city book tour, meaning she'll be out in public in crowded venues with thousands of possible threats being monitored. So by taking away her Secret Service, Trump isn't just being petty, he is putting her life at risk.
U.S. President Donald Trump revoked Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection yesterday. Harris, as a former vice president, received 6 months of protection after leaving office, according to federal law. Former President Joe Biden had extended that protection for an additional year. Harris reportedly faced increased security concerns after she became the Democratic Party's presidential nominee in 2024.
Trump cancels Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection. Normally, Secret Service protection for a vice president lasts about 6 months, but Joe Biden extended it to a full year. But Donald Trump, the small, petty, worthless, unloved, useless human being that he is, canceled it for Kamala Harris just before she's to extend on a 35-city bus tour. This while him and his cronies go around calling Democrats radical left lunatics trying to destroy this country. Meanwhile, we have a country where we have more guns than people, and definitely most of these gun owners aren't too smart. So we're going to have people who are riled up against Kamala Harris with guns right before she is to extend on a 35-city bus tour without any Secret Service protection. This guy is the most petty, worthless human being. When it finally happens, there will be so much joy in this world. I will travel down to wherever he's interned just to piss on his grave. And I hope every one of you do the same thing. Fuck this worthless human being.
And ABC News has learned President Trump is revoking Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. Former President Biden extended Harris's protective detail for an additional year on top of the legally required 6 months. Now, a senior official says President Trump told DHS in a memo to discontinue security-related procedures for Harris beyond those required by law, effective September 1st. In March, the president also canceled former Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas' detail, along with the details of the Biden children, John Bolton, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
So today, Donald Trump woke up and thought it would be a great idea to take away Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection. It's very obvious that he's still upset over the debate where she humiliated him in front of the entire world. Of course, presidents receive Secret Service protection for life, but Harris, a former vice president, received 6 months of protections after leaving office, according to federal law. That period ended on July 21st. However, her protection had been extended for an additional year via a directive not made public until now, signed by President Joe Biden shortly before he left office. Now, to me, it's very obvious that he signed this directive because she was running for president, therefore she needed additional protections. That extension that Joe Biden signed shortly before leaving office is what Donald Trump decided to cancel today. Kamala Harris has received multiple different death threats because she was the first black woman to be the vice president. But since Donald Trump was humiliated by her in front of the entire world during the debates, he decided he was going to revoke her additional protections. He's making this decision just as Kamala Harris is about to go on a multi-city book tour, meaning she'll be out in public in crowded venues with thousands of possible threats being monitored. So by taking away her Secret Service, Trump isn't just being petty, he is putting her life at risk.
President Trump has revoked Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. A senior White House official tells NBC News the vice president typically only gets 6 months of protection after leaving office. But a Secret Service official says President Biden had signed an executive memorandum in January to extend protections for Harris to 18 months. It's only been about 7 months since Harris left office. A senior advisor to Harris issued this statement. In response, the vice president is grateful to the United States Secret Service for their professionalism, dedication, and unwavering commitment to safety. This is not the first time that Mr. Trump has ended Secret Service protections for someone. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton had his security detail terminated just hours after Trump returned to the White House in January. Bolton served in Trump's first administration, and his home and his offices were searched by the FBI earlier this week. Protections were also revoked for Mr. Trump's former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and a former top aide Brian Hook. Then in March, Trump ended Secret Service protections for President Biden's adult children, Hunter and Ashley. What does it all mean? I mean, this news is just coming into us, but what's the legality of this? If President Biden had extended the protection and then President Trump overturns President Biden's offer, is this just like an executive order that a president can overrule and so he can go ahead with this? And what do you think it means?
Absolutely. It's up to the president. It was up to Biden to extend it. It's up to Trump to decide that's not what he wants to do. That's why you want to pass laws instead of just signed executive orders, because they have more staying power. You know, in a way, it's not surprising. Traditionally, vice presidents get 6 months of protection after they leave office. On the other hand, we live in a very violent time. We know that every day. With reports of violence like we see in Minneapolis now. And it comes at a really awkward time for Kamala Harris, whose book is coming out in days, and a big book tour is planned. And now the security arrangements I'm sure she was counting on for that tour have just been taken away. And by the way, I've been trying to get an interview with her about her new book. So if she's watching,
listening,
yes,
okay.
I'm anyway. But I do think
message out from Susan.
I don't think it's an outrage. It's not unprecedented. It's not one of those kinds of things. It does create some complications, I think, for the former vice president.
And ABC News has learned President Trump is revoking Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. Former President Biden extended Harris's protective detail for an additional year on top of the legally required 6 months. Now, a senior official says President Trump told DHS in a memo to discontinue security-related procedures for Harris beyond those required by law, effective September 1st. In March, the president also canceled former Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas' detail, along with the details of the Biden children, John Bolton, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Donald Trump has revoked Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection detail. Now, typically, a vice president only gets 6 months, but before leaving office, President Biden extended Kamala Harris's protective detail to 18 months because not only was she the former vice president, but she was the presidential nominee for the election. And we are living in a time of heightened political violence against Democrats. Now, to put some perspective on this, when Trump left office in 2021, he actually extended a lot of Secret Service protection detail to members of his administration and his family. And Joe Biden was like, you know what, dude, fine. You can have that extra protection. That's your call, and I'm not going to revoke it as president. Additionally, when there was that incident in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, Joe Biden increased Trump's protective detail, despite the fact that, Biden doesn't like Trump. He still did the right thing and increased his protective detail. Of course, Donald Trump didn't do any of that. And I find it interesting that he's revoking this right before she goes on her book tour. I don't know what kind of heads up he gave her that he was doing this, but I'd love to know if she actually had enough heads up to get a new security staff in place before she lost her Secret Service protection. And this, my friends, is exactly why Kamala Harris needs to make bank on her book tour, because high-level Secret Service type protection, when it's privately funded, is extremely expensive. And she absolutely needs it.